Hi Neil. I want to apologize for how long it took me to get this interview back to you. I realized that I was just going to have to put it out on video because I overthink things, and writing out the answers to the questions was making me do this at a snail's pace. So here is my video interview for you with all the questions that you so nicely and thoughtfully wrote out and sent to me. Getting into it, you asked, when did I first discover a love for competitive wrestling and fighting? Well, I have been competitive all my life. I was the annoying little kid who always had to have the answer in class and always had to be first and best. But I wasn't ever really a sporty kid. I was competitive in other ways, and it wasn't until my senior year of college that I ever even tried wrestling, and that was kind of a fluke. I was just kind of playing around with my boyfriend at the time, and we were wrestling, and I won just by being too absolutely stubborn to give up, even though I had no clue what I was doing at the time. And I loved it. I thought that was awesome. And I just kept it in the back of my mind that if I ever got a chance, I would want to do that again. And after I moved to New York, after college, I got invited to a party where people had put wrestling mats down in one corner. And I was just like, oh my God, I have been wanting to do that ever since, that fun afternoon when I beat my boyfriend. And so I jumped in, I was like, let me try. And from then on, I met some people that were doing this. I found out when they were meeting next and where I could go, and I was so hooked. And I never looked back after finding, a place and people with whom I could do this. And that's how that started. Question number 2, you asked, you look great in your photos. Well, thank you. Has working on your physical conditioning always been a lifestyle choice? Not to the degree that I've lately gotten into doing it. Like I said, I wasn't a sporty kid, but I did run. I was on the cross-country team for distance running in middle school and in high school, so I was active. We cross-trained with weights, so I had a clue about what to do in the gym. I fortunately never had to be the person that walked into a gym and didn't know what you were supposed to do with a dumbbell. But I wasn't really very involved in that until I did start wrestling in New York, and I met other athletic people, including people that had the expertise where they could really tell me how to get results, how to weightlift for really good results. And the combination of getting into wrestling, finding out I loved it, finding people that motivated me, and learning how to get good results from weightlifting at the same time, that all came together and made me so excited, and really sealed the deal on when I started to love fitness. So it's been something like an 8-year sort of journey for me to go from, I worked out once in a while, to yes, I do a lot of this and I love it. And then the next question. In England, most of the main wrestling places are in London and the Southeast. Me, are based in New York. Is the scene pretty big there with many places to wrestle? Well, I will say that there are wrestlers in New York, but there's not really what you would call a scene. People are fairly independent. There's not the sense that I kind of saw when I did visit London last year and previously, that sense of sort of community that it was really cool. When I went to London, I had a lot of fun meeting people, and then meeting people that knew other people that all worked together. In New York, it's it makes sense. It's the sort of city where people are really independent. There's wrestling, but there's not exactly what you'd call a scene. And I think that's a little different from what I've heard, at least, about even other parts of the U.S. And I am planning to travel out to the West Coast this spring and kind of get a look at what is going on in some of the other parts of the U.S. And compare that to kind of how New York does things. And next question. Can you tell us about Doom Maidens and how you became involved? Yes, absolutely. So Doom Maidens is a wrestling video company, and it's my company that I run with my videographer. And it is definitely now not really what it was when it started, though, and when I got involved. When I was getting into wrestling in New York, there was an event called Amateur Female Jello Wrestling that was a really wacky, goofy, fun thing to do in New York. And ladies would come out, and it was good fun. You do Jello wrestling one night a month in a bar somewhere, and it was really corny, hammy, like bad pro style moves and like wacky costumes, and it drew a few people, though, that really wanted to get into wrestling a little bit more seriously, that wanted to be doing this not just as a wacky, goofy performance, but also competitively. And so I met a few ladies there that wanted to get together and train, and we started to do that. And from that, we wanted to know what to do with our wrestling now. And we formed a group, Doom Maidens, that didn't immediately know what we were going to do. We did some things like performances in bars, and we thought about whether we were going to be involved in session wrestling, and we also tried wrestling videos. And wrestling videos were a huge, fantastic thing that turned out to be eventually what Doom Maidens was all about. And through the years, I'm kind of the only founding member still around, but other ladies have come and gone, and what we have now is a roster of ladies that are local that can be called on really frequently for videos, and visiting talent that also comes in and films with us. And it's been what you might call a long, strange trip, but really successful, and I'm super excited to be doing it now. For me, it turned out to be like exactly the thing. And okay, so next question. In other parts of America outside of NYC, is wrestling popular, and have I wrestled in different states? Yes, absolutely. I've wrestled in different states. I travel a lot for my session wrestling, and sometimes for videos I've shot with also other producers outside of New York. So wrestling is popular in different parts of the U.S., and one of the fun things is to see what kind of wrestling is popular in different parts of the U.S. Here on the East Coast, and I think on the West Coast too, like submission grappling is really popular. But when I go to the middle of the country, where American scholastic wrestling is really strong, I've never gotten as many requests anywhere else for pin style wrestling as I did there. So you can see like America's wrestling heritage reflected also in like what people look for in session wrestling. It's pretty cool, and you'll get surprises. Like the best wrestling trip I ever took was to Detroit. I had no idea. I went there, and it was like the most busy, hoppin' wrestling visit that I ever made. I was doing nothing but wrestling, like not even sleeping. And from all reports that I hear, the West Coast is really amazing. There's a lot of really good wrestlers and also really good video producers, and I'm excited that I'm going there in May to hopefully wrestle a lot of guys, work with a lot of producers, and hopefully also meet up with some of the amazing female talent that I hear is out there. So that should be pretty cool. And a question, is this a full-time job for you now? Yes, it is. It has just passed my 1-year anniversary of transitioning over from doing this on the side as my secondary job, as I held down a 9-to-5 regular job for a long time. But this, my wrestling became so successful and so time-consuming that this was almost the main job, and my 9-to-5 was like the on the side, even in the way job. And last February, I switched over doing this full time, and it's been amazing. And I'm really happy I've been able to do that. Let's see. And another question. I had a trip to Europe last year. Was it my first time over there? It's my first time in continental Europe for wrestling. But London I have visited now 3 times for wrestling. And any highlights of that trip? Well, London is fun because I know people there now after having visited several times and having had some really great London wrestlers come over and visit New York. So that was really fun to see the people that I already knew, see them again, get to wrestle with them again. And the other, what I would say, highlight of that trip was visiting Paris and finding that, kind of like Detroit in the US, you can just wrestle there non-stop. I had so many requests that I just couldn't take them all, for which I apologize to the guys I couldn't see, but just saw like what amazingly great, wonderful interest there was from so many people, and what a really, I guess, sort of bustling wrestling city Paris is. It definitely makes me want to go back. So that trip was really good. It definitely inspired me to return, and I'm planning to return this coming fall and do a longer tour with more stops throughout Europe. That should be really, really neat. Let's see, and how would I compare the men that I wrestled in Europe with those that I wrestle in America? Any difference in attitude or style? That's a tough one, actually, because within both the American men that I see and within the population of the European men that I saw, you get requests for all kinds of things and different sorts of matches and different interests. But I did get the feeling, like I mentioned before, that there's more of a scene in Europe. There's a little bit more protocol, and the guys that wrote to me from Europe were much more likely to provide, like offer volunteer references and talk about who else they'd seen, and make it sound like they were really aware of the wrestling going on as a community and as a larger scene, whereas guys that I hear from in the US are often asking me, what's this all about? Can you tell me how it's done? It's my first time. The guys in Europe seemed, overall, not universally, but overall, to just have more of a sense of this being something they'd done before, something they were familiar with, and that they were more familiar with the protocol for doing it. So I did get that sense, which was interesting. Let's see. Oh, and another question. I do fetish modeling as well as wrestling, which is a popular combination. And do you think the two go together? Yes, totally, absolutely. Since not only do I wrestle, but I'm a video producer, you find out that what's really, really useful is when a wrestler has broader skills, like doesn't just wrestle, but also knows how to incorporate other fetish elements. When I started out wrestling, I did just competitive wrestling. That's what I knew, and that's what I did. And people would just ask me gradually over the course of the years that I've been doing this, could you do it with this plot line? Could you do it with this costume? Could you do it with more emphasis on feet? Could you do it with more characterization where you're like meaner or you're nicer? Or could you use this hold but not that hold? And then of course I also got, could you do things like balloons, and could you do things like bondage? And you find out that wrestling doesn't stand alone. It usually does integrate, or it coincides with a lot of other fetishes that makes total sense. If you can wrestle somebody, you can physically defeat them. It makes perfect sense for something like a kidnapping scenario, like for a role play. If you can wrestle somebody, you have the ability to force them, not just like come to a polite agreement, but you can force them to kiss your feet because you've beaten them. So the fetishes are so interconnected that to just do one isn't, for me, as interesting as doing so many other things, and isn't, I think, as interesting to as many people as being able to blend them together. So yeah, wrestling and fetish modeling are a brilliant combination, I would have to say. Let's see. Oh, and going on with fetish related questions, I'm curious about the giant climb-in balloon work you've done. It looked like fun. How did the idea for that come about? Kind of exactly like I said, once I started putting things out, people asked for other things. They would see me, they'd see what I was doing, they would ask for something sort of related. I was putting out scissoring videos, and someone said to me, if you scissor a person, you have to kind of go easy because you don't really want to kill them. You have to be a little bit nice so you don't really hurt them. But if you scissor something like a balloon, you can show your full strength because you can just pop it. You don't have to worry about hurting it. So I made some balloon scissoring clips. I put those out, and then people that liked balloons saw those and sent me more requests for other balloon things, including climbing balloons, which I thought sounded like so much fun. I was like, yes, I will absolutely do that. Just send me the balloon. And so that's how that got started. And let's see. Another question, you offer a wide range of sessions from fantasy to belly punching to fully competitive. What kind of wrestling do you prefer the most? I always like for there to be at least some competitive element to the wrestling. I like when I do a domination wrestling session, for example, to kind of arrive there at the domination. Because I always think that if somebody doesn't really try, they might hold in the back of their mind that, oh, well, maybe if I tried, I could have won. So whether I'm doing a competitive session, which is fun, or if I'm doing a domination session, I want there to have been a competitive part, at least, so that I can have my victory and the person can know that it's legitimate, that they didn't let me win. That I think is always really great. And let's see. Oh, okay, this question. Oh, I get this question a lot. I'm intrigued about the step up from competitive wrestling to ultra competitive. How ultra is ultra? So ultra competitive is kind of a funny thing. I would say competitive wrestling, and people would just kind of not believe me. Oh, so how much do I have to hold back? Oh, I'm bigger than you, so if I go 50%, you go, and I'm like, seriously, ultra competitive really means competitive. It just means that I mean it when I say competitive. I mean, you're allowed to try, for real. And I'm going to try for real. And competitive is not a code for something other than competitive. That's kind of what ultra competitive meant when I put it out there. But then so many people asked me about it that I almost had to make up another answer for some people who kept asking me what that meant. So I've also offered, for the people that have asked if I do MMA style sessions or if there can be striking, I can say, well, ultra competitive could also mean, if you're interested, that we can do body punching and face slapping. I don't, in a session, ever do like face punching, because that just isn't worth it for something that's supposed to be fun for both people. But sure, if you want to have this sort of session where you get your blood up a little bit, ultra competitive could also mean body punching and face slaps, which yeah, I kind of only started to tell people that after I got asked like the 50th time what ultra competitive meant. Let's see, and second to last question, what do you do to unwind away from the mat? Depends on the time of year. Right now it is the end of winter when I am so sad, and to unwind I sit around and wish for summer. But when it is summertime, I really enjoy biking. That's what I do, not for fitness but for fun. I'll go on long bike rides all around, circumnavigating Manhattan or biking out to Long Island to the beaches, and just getting as much sunshine as I can. And another thing that I enjoy getting out to coffee shops around New York. I'll cafe hop. I will like to spend those like long meandering days, wandering just from place to place. And certainly a good book or a good movie is never amiss either. And those will get me through the winter until I can do my biking and beach going again. And the very, very last question here. What do I ultimately enjoy about wrestling that keeps you wanting to improve and develop? I think I would need to turn that question around a little bit and say that it's improving and developing that kind of makes me enjoy wrestling. That the times when I felt like, if you're not, when you're not quite there, when you're not really into it, you realize it's because you're not changing or you're not pushing yourself. And it is those times when you feel like you're learning, when you feel like you are improving, when you feel like you've got some new skill coming together, that you really enjoy wrestling most. And that urge to get better. And for me, I've always wanted to be the person that, that sets himself apart from the other ladies, or from a lot of the ladies doing this, by saying, I will go competitive. I do have the skills to really back up what I say. And I can take you in a fight. That inspires me. I want to be able to have that cred. That makes me really motivated to not only do this, but to always improve myself doing this. And just as an aside, not only is there that enjoyment of doing the competitive, really technical, skilled, legit wrestling. What also keeps this fresh is that I will get so many neat, cool, new, surprising video request scenarios and fantasies. Some things that are totally unrealistic, but they can surprise me every time. So combining the sport aspect of this, where I can feel like I'm improving and getting better and bettering myself and bettering my skills, with the really fun, fantasy and fetish aspects that are always, new and creative and surprising, and sometimes touching, even when people will really confide in me, like a special fantasy that they've had. Combining all of those things makes this just the coolest thing ever to do. And, definitely keeps me loving it. So I will be doing this for, the foreseeable future, as long as I possibly can. And I hope people will follow along and see what I'm doing with it. Thanks so much for the questions, for interviewing me, and much appreciated. It's been fun.